is Jaya Polumuru. He's actually the founder and CEO of iCompaas, and he's going to be talking to us today about the challenges facing modern CISOs. Let's give Jaya a big round of applause. Thank you, Jaya.
Hello everyone, I'm JP. I'm going to talk about challenges facing modern CISOs. Yes, that's me, many moons ago, so don't judge me. First, I want to talk about the issue that is really dear to my heart. I don't think a lot of the speakers today and in general I've seen don't focus on the holistic view of cybersecurity in general, because people focus on, okay, let's say passwordless or some one aspect, right? But what I really wanted to do today is really help take a look at this whole area of cybersecurity from a 35,000 foot view, right? And for us to talk about CISOs, I want to first start by talking about the security threat landscape. And in 2021, as you can see, there are about 4,000 plus publicly disclosed, disclosed data breaches. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, right? Because they're publicly disclosed, there could be more. And the number of records that were compromised are 22 billion records, not million. And as you can see that the amount of devastation that causes is kind of a lot, and for a company, especially if it's a US-based company, the amount of cost that you have to bear is approaching $10 million. So this is not a small thing. This is not something that you could kind of brush away, right? And obviously the healthcare industry has been seeing a lot of ransomware attacks that's compromising a lot of people's and also putting lives at risk, really. And one of the biggest in all of this statistics, one thing that actually disheartens me the most is the number of days it takes to identify and actually, fix a data breach. That's 283 days. It's pretty much a better part of the year just spending and even identifying an issue. That is outrageous. I think that has to be fixed. We live in a data economy. We know this, right? Data is being collected and sold in different ways and benefited, the consumers are benefiting from it. But one thing that we don't do well is actually take care of it. So that's definitely something that I'm passionate about, and I really think that we should take a look at. So next thing is, how are these attackers, what are they focusing on? What type of attack vectors are they using? So let's look at that. So this is actually an IBM research. You'll see, again, there's no surprise here. A lot of the kind of problems are because of compromised credentials. Nowadays, one of the things that happens, you must have seen, where if you have AWS credentials, some novice developer might commit that into a code in a public repository, and that can be scanned by attackers, and that can be used against you. And they can compromise your entire kind of system through that. And then of course, phishing and cloud misconfigurations are also a big part of, as you can see on the right-hand corner, those are the biggest percentages of what causes, those are the attack vectors that are being used, that are being successful. But one interesting one is the business email compromise. So if your business email is compromised, you actually pay a much higher premium, just $5 million. So obviously that's something that, again, through this research, IBM is talking about how that can be a critical part of how you're designing your cybersecurity strategy, and also kind of thinking about what you should be doing and prioritizing in your organization. So let's look at what industries are they going after, right? So let's see, again, healthcare is going to be at the top. It's no surprise, most of the ransomware attacks are happening to healthcare industries. And also because it's valuable data, right? There's a lot of data there that the attackers like. And of course, pharma, which is close below, but it's kind of, I would club them together, as well as you have financial data. That is going to be the next one, clearly, because again, social security numbers and bank account numbers and things like that are going to be a big, valued item for these attackers. But looking at the list, you can clearly see no industry is safe, right? Because everyone is adopting the newer technologies and they want to get all the benefit of using the newer versions of softwares and platforms and stacks, but they don't have the appropriate measures in place though. Are they doing that enough to actually take care of it? No, that's kind of clearly the case here. So, who are the most vulnerable? So, okay, so we talked about industries, but there's one segment of companies, mostly basically SMBs. They are the most vulnerable of the lot. And the reason is that they are hyper-focused on growth. They want to get business growth at any cost, but then they are not really focusing on the cybersecurity side of things because again, let's be honest, they don't care about it as much in that initial growth phase. But they are compiling a lot of data that is valuable. And this is the intersection point that's really, really, I would say the attackers love going after that, right? And just to illustrate that point, let's look at the funding trends. This has been crazy. I mean, we had a crazy bull market, which has stopped, obviously, now that everyone knows. But until that point, you can see the number of investments that are being made and the amount of funding that is going into funding new companies and early stage companies. So if you look at this last year, more than around 4,500 deals were made to the tune of $24 billion. So all of that money is going into companies and getting into their growth, but no one's thinking about, are we making these companies safe? So investors should care about growth and realizing multiples of their investments, sure, fine. But what if you're keeping a big door and the risk open of not actually securing and not mandating a budget for cybersecurity? So in my opinion, that should be top of a board member or an investor checklist. Hey guys, fine, you're building a great company. How about make sure that you're also taking care of your cybersecurity strategy? So do you have a strategy in place? What are your goals? What are your milestones? That should be part of the conversation we should be having, because that's kind of critical. So I'm going to show you something, right? So first, I want to talk about what is a taxonomy. It's basically, the science and practice of classification, really. And we at iCompaas, what we wanted to do, we wanted to do something crazy. We wanted to figure out what's there in cybersecurity, what are all the topics. So again, we have used other resources and there are other people that we have been using this information and we gathered all this information from. But we created a multi-level taxonomy of the entire cybersecurity topics. And this, in my opinion, is gonna still grow and we're gonna keep evolving this. But obviously looking at this, you can see it's complex, right? So we thought, okay, fine, it's a multi-level taxonomy of the topics. It can look daunting. Maybe we can make it two-level taxonomy and see if that helps reduce the complexity. Doesn't look like it, right? So clearly, if this is, a CISO has to deal with all this. Just remember that, right? Day in, day out. And actually I want to ask the room, how many here are playing the CISO role, or right, or a security analyst role, for example? Yeah, some people. Yeah, great. So maybe there are a lot more business people here today, but I would say it's a challenge. This is not an easy role. It's not an easy endeavor to be on. So we believe like highlighting all the topics and knowing that. So we have actually we went a step further. We have actually created an interactive diagram where an interactive visualization that can be used in our tool to actually manage some of these topics. So now I want to talk about the CISO role itself. So if I wanted to get started on this cybersecurity strategy, right? And I'm looking to hire a CISO. I need to define the role or set of criteria of what should that person have, the kind of experience and the relevant skill set that they should possess. And I would start from, let's say, they should have, obviously, security strategy and governance, right? That should be part of their knowledge, because that basically is covering all of that big taxonomy thing that we talked about. It's actually covering all of that, right? And you have security operations, right? Automating some of the security stuff, and not only that, and some other aspects in your company that's going to help have a better handle on things, right? Incident response is their responsibility, which is part of security operations, and also vulnerability management, patching, stuff like that. And one of the key things, in my opinion, is also business enablement, right? So businesses are not there to just have a security person on staff who's not really contributing. No. First of all, they need to align the business, they need to enable them and help them actually move quicker and go to vendors or go to customers with confidence that, hey, we have your back, we're doing things, so don't worry, you can go sell the product. So that's kind of part of the skill set that they should have. Technology alignment. The technology, software development lifecycle, the IT side of things, all of them have to align to the new practices, and also, again, data privacy, right? So that's not something that can be achieved just by tools. It's a set of practices and the mindset. And that's what we want, the culture of that needs to be induced by a leader, a CISO leadership person. And then, of course, the leadership and communication aspect, right? So, okay, so you have a strategy, or you're figuring out the strategy based on the business needs. Now you have to communicate effectively with everyone in your company, and people with different skill set at all different levels. You need to be able to talk to them, you need to be able to kind of convince them, have them execute on your security strategy so that the company's going to start reaping the benefits of your of the overall kind of security implementation. And then also, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is future trends, because there's a lot of changes and new privacy laws that are coming into play. There's so much going on. You need to keep up with all that, otherwise, you won't be able to do your job effectively. So these are all the criteria for the CISO role. We did a deep dive. We kind of went down the rabbit hole for this. So our research team sifted through hundreds of CISO role job descriptions and tried to categorize each of the responsibility into the criteria that we talked about. And we found out that, not surprisingly, most people get the security strategy and governance part right. Like, yeah, sure, we need that. Security operations part right, that's fine too. But they actually fail to give the importance to the leadership and communication aspect, because that's actually critical for you to be able to actually successfully do anything. And then also the fact that they have to develop and grow talent, especially in an environment where there's a huge skills shortage, right? You can't find good security analysts who are trained and who have some experience. And of course, technology alignment. It's crazy that, the technology alignment is only 5%, only 5% of the companies are looking at that, which is not good enough. Everyone, if that is not the case, then you won't be able to actually get things done in your company. So, and also the fact that the future trends are not being looked at, right? So that's our findings from that, but I want to get to the meat of the crux of this whole talk was to talk about the challenges faced by CISOs. So obviously they have to, kind of face the threat landscape. They have to fight it. They have to make sure that the right things are in place and that that's being taken care of. Keep up with all the new hardware that is being deployed, especially if you're on cloud. All the new versions of software that are coming out, the new stacks and frameworks that they have to handle, all of that stuff. Again, you cannot just do that if you don't have deeper knowledge of the architecture and data flow in your whenever you're kind of starting. Like if you don't have that knowledge, if the CISO doesn't have that, it's going to be hard for them to be able to really keep up with things and be able to have an effective strategy in place. And then you have all these privacy changes we talked about. So they also have to deal with budget constraints because they are not going to be given a lot of budget, right? I remember CISOs, they themselves cost a lot of money and the team can cost a lot of money, but obviously when they have to roll out and actually execute on things, they still have to think about budget. There's a skill squad we talked about, and of course, one thing not enough people talk about is the number of compliance questionnaires that they have to fill. And I'm sure there's a pain point for the people who are working in that field. They really have to really deal with that. So let's kind of take this up a notch. If you are an SMB, then forget about it. The amount of challenges you have is even more than for a CISO, because if you have to hire a security team, you're looking at, of a team of 4, let's say, you're looking at upwards of 600K that you're spending on that, just on payroll, right? And then it's not like you have CISOs ready to kind of come and join you, so there's a shortage of that. And one thing we noticed that, if you look at it, most of the SMBs, the CTOs are playing the role of the CISO. That's kind of happening already, right? And you'll also see that the number of tools that they have to manage is growing up, and one of the big things that came out of the pandemic is remote work. Now, people, you will not be able to retain your workforce if you don't give them the option to work remotely. But this room, I don't have to explain to you guys why that is much harder to enforce and do more from a cybersecurity standpoint. So you have that as another additional challenge for an SMB. And of course, the compliance requirements, especially if you're in a financial or a healthcare industry, you have HIPAA, SOC 2, all of the things that you have to kind of actually be compliant with. So you have those that you need to do as well. And with all of this, and especially the one thing that I want to focus on, the CTOs playing the role of CISO for SMBs, it's basically a very reactionary, strategy, right? So because clearly you didn't anticipate and you don't know that all of this work that you need to be doing from a security standpoint. So you have the CTO who has a good amount of overlap with the work that CISO is doing, but doesn't have the knowledge and the background that is needed by CISO to be able to have an effective strategy. So what should SMBs do, right? It's not like they should give up and just because they have budget constraints and they can't do much. But what we believe can help is, first of all, have a handle on things and have education and awareness of all the topics and the things that they should be doing, right? And in the interim, it's a controversial thing to say, but empower the CTO. This is happening already. How about we acknowledge that, not push it under the rug, right? Let's make sure that the CTOs are empowered to do the job of a CISO, even temporarily, but do it effectively though, right? Have some tools and things in place so they can actually take an overall look at things and be able to really do the job of setting a security strategy and implementing some security, enforcements, do that effectively, right? And for us SMB, not knowing what you have as a strategy is kind of a non-starter. I think, as I said, more people should be forcing companies to have the strategy in place. And of course, you can engage with virtual CISOs. This is now fractional CISOs, virtual CISOs is a concept that's coming up. There's a lot more of that happening because not all small businesses gonna need the bandwidth of a full-time CISO. So, talking with them and taking their expertise, using that was gonna be really, really critical. And then, doing regular pen testing, automation, alignment, all of that. And then, of course, get cybersecurity insurance. It's going to be critical for you to have that. So I want to just, at the end, talk about iCompaas and what we are doing and how we are helping the situation. And we want to be a part of the solution, right? So we believe that this kind of outlook of going super high, looking at the 35,000 foot level of this industry and kind of coming up with strategy, coming up with, chance for generating policy documents and questionnaires and things like that. We believe by doing all of these things, and we have a new platform that we're launching called CISO.ai, and we believe these features are going to help companies, especially SMBs, get a handle on cybersecurity strategy as well as just being able to kind of do what is really necessary to secure their customer data and really do right by their investors and consumers and everyone. So that's basically my talk, and thanks for your attention.